YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back. Just over a week away until NFL free agency starts. It's going to be a wild free agency. It's kind of already wild with all these roster moves. And we'll have you covered for all of that. But today's video, I'm counting down my top 10 teams that absolutely must dominate this free agency. And we'll talk about why. You may be looking for teams that make the list. And we'll talk about those teams at the end. Maybe you're wondering where they're at, just missed the list. And we'll talk about why they didn't make the list. So we're breaking this all down. Really excited about this video. A lot of the content that's coming. Excited about that as well. Full coverage. We'll grade every single free agency signing. So subscribe. Follow our Twitter. Breaking news. Breaking down that news. It's an absolute must follow at GoatHouse NFL. Link in the comments for anything that you need, including walkthemock.com, which you see underneath me. That's what we use to do our member mock drafts, which we've done 2 of. Had a lot of fun doing. So you can sign up. Use Goat House as your code. Ends up being cheap here in draft season. Check it out. Here's our Twitter at GoatHouse NFL. Just constant news, updates on the channel, draft clips, everything you can think of. So check it out. Number 10 on the must dominate this free agency, New England Patriots. See their projected cap. We still don't have this set team salary, but it'll be in that range. They have a lot of cap space. Now, having a lot of cap space doesn't necessarily mean you have to use it all in one offseason. But I feel like this is a team that needs to go big here. They absolutely need to go big. First glance, it's like maybe they just only need a quarterback, and that could be the case. If you add a solid quarterback, easier said than done, then they can definitely contend, for something at least. But I think it's more than that. They have a lot of free agents. They have to kind of finish completing the offensive line. They got free agent with Tooney, with Andrews at center. Receivers definitely, I guess a major hole. They got to get better there at receiver. And then you look in the defense, the entire defensive front actually could be replaced. Linebacker unit will be fine, especially getting Hightower back. They're getting guys back from opt-out last year here and there, but they need to go big, finding that quarterback, completing the offensive line, getting some guys back, especially you look at the running back position as well, looking at the receiver position, the defensive line. So again, yes, they can be a playoff contender if they just add a quarterback, but if you start to look closely, there is some work to be done. So they need to have a pretty damn good free agency here. They come in at number 10. I do think there are 9 teams that need to go bigger or it's a fail. Number 9 is going to be the Cleveland Browns. Now the Browns, the good thing is, if they don't go entirely big this offseason, I do think they have some time. It's a pretty young team. That offensive line just got put together last season, and it was already dominant, maybe the best in football. So that's good, but the offense is pretty complete. And with that offensive scheme, it can be a predictable offensive scheme. It's fairly new, Stefanski winning coach of the year. And a lot of times you see guys win coach of the year and then all of a sudden their scheme starts to get figured out and then they kind of go downhill. So not saying that's going to happen here, but with that type of scheme, a lot of running the ball, a lot of play action, it's not something that really stays fresh for a long time. So their window is actually now, even though it's a young team. And again, they're going to continue to grow. Their window should be now. And you have the offense in place. You have to complete this defense. They do have, they need another pass rusher. They could use another interior. Their linebacker unit's kind of a mess. They were beat up last year. Secondary beat up, but they could be better. Need speed in general at defense. So now is the time to complete this defense. If you complete this defense, you are a legit contender, and you don't have to worry about that window. So they got to do some damage there, but the good thing is they can focus on one side of the ball. But if they come out empty-handed pretty much, only one big signing or just a few minor signings, everyone's going to have a few minor signings, but that would be very underwhelming. We'll be disappointed in this team, and they may not be high on the contending list this upcoming year. Number 8 is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. Projected cap should be around $8 million now after the J.J. Watt signing. The good thing about the J.J. Watt signing is it wasn't a ginormous cap hit this year, but it is pretty big for the future, even when he's not going to be playing for the Cardinals. There's void years on the end of that. We've been talking about that. But looking at that contract, it tells you something very clear on something with that contract. They believe they are contending for the Super Bowl right now, or can. That's what that contract says. It's one contract, but that's what it says. So put your money where your mouth's at, or put your money where your money was just at with J.J. Watt. So if they just don't do some damage here, and only $8 million, so not a lot of wiggle room, but they can clear more space. So it doesn't fall under the category of teams that need to get better, but can't. They for sure can. They can clear a little more space here with some cuts, a restructure of DJ Humphries, not a pay cut. We've talked about all that on Twitter and in past videos. But this is a team that is trying to say, we're going to win right now. And that's perfectly fine. It's a fairly new offense. It's hard to game plan against, but they had some struggles with play calling, and Kyler Murray wasn't playing his best ball down the stretch of the season. they're letting some more pressure in. Receivers outside of Hopkins weren't getting separation, so that would be the reasoning. So, but before that, they were looking like a pretty sneaky team, So they could be that, but they have to go to work some more. They may let Hassan Reddick walk. They have Gardeck to take care of. We'll see what kind of scheme they run, but they have pieces to fill, especially at the cornerback position. But they got to retool the offensive line. Not a lot, but they do. They're allowing a lot of pressure on Kyler Murray at the end of the year. Earlier was pretty good. Running game, Kenyon Drake's free agent. He wasn't getting the job done at that high of a level last year. And again, the receivers weren't getting the best separation. They had nothing going inside middle of the field, and that made things harder for Kyler Murray. So they got to get the job done. They're trying to say they're a contender right now. So go put your money where your mouth is. That's the best way to sum up the Arizona Cardinals, I guess. So if they don't do damage this offseason, it's a fail. It's a fail. Looking at that J.J. Watt contract, they got big hits coming in the future. They've kind of limited their opportunities then. So we'll see what they can do. Number 7 is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. This might be a wild card team because you could say they're pretty young though. They have a lot of cap space. Do they really need to spend it because they're pretty young and they got a future. They got good draft picks and all that's true. But I think right now is a time where you got to go in. I don't think you should, hit the brakes, pump the brakes just because you're young. You can't be afraid to get better. I always use that term, and I think it falls on the Bengals here for several reasons. This team's got Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a fantastic quarterback prospect. I think he can be more than a fantastic quarterback prospect. He should be. If he's healthy right now. Now's the time. And you're only going to affect him, make him play worse than he is, not be able to reach his potential earlier by making his job harder by not finishing that offensive line. And that offensive line, it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 spots. It's pretty much the whole offensive line. Some guys could be better with the better unit. Guys like Jonah Williams, he's got to stay healthy as well. So they don't need 5 starters up there, but they got to go to work there. They need to go to work replacing A.J. Green because they used their top 3 receivers with so many snaps, so many reps last year, so they value that. They could get better at tight end. Looking at the defense, they have some re-signing to do. Carl Lawson, stud of a pass rusher. They need to get him back. You take a look at William Jackson, Mackenzie Alexander. That secondary could be pretty good if they bring these guys back. So on top of having to dominate their own free agency, their own re-signings, they have to dominate actual free agency for their offensive line so they can be better. But so Joe Burrow could be better, and he's not affected now and for his future because you don't want to make things harder. You don't want another injury coming back. So they got a lot of work to do. I also think this team could be sneaky good right away. That's a really tough division, but that's one of those teams, if they do it right, a lot of work to do. They have to dominate, but if they do it right, it's a candidate for worst to first. Really is. So Bengals, again, even though you think, young team, good draft picks, they got time. They do have time, but you can't make it hard on their players. You got to get something going now. You can get Joe Mixon going by the offensive line too, not just Joe Burrow. So we'll see. They need to go in. They can't act like they're a young team with time. They cannot. So that's number 7. 6 is the Miami Dolphins. Another team you may think, pretty young team. They got a lot of draft picks. They got time, and they do have time. But similar to Joe Burrow, Tua, they got to get Tua going. And mainly with him, I saw a lot of kind of maybe in his own head a little confidence issues last year because we know he has the talent. The deep ball just was non-existent, but we know he has that talent. We've seen it. Deep ball or, being aggressive, throws downfield basically in general, explosive plays. They don't just go away because you go from college to the NFL. There's really not a difference there on you taking those shots. So I think it was kind of a confidence thing. The lack of weapons on the offense, fairly new offense. On top of that, him coming off that gruesome injury, I think all played a part. So it makes sense. It's understandable. But you don't want him kind of sitting in that same area, in his own mind. You want to get this out of him. You want to get it out of him fast. That defense could be really good too under Brian Flores. So they could the defense showed they can win now. They felt like they were not a lock, but pretty close to getting to a lock, to make the playoffs. They kind of blew that last week. So if you finish the offensive line, get Tua some weapons, get a running back so his job's not that much harder. And then, so they got to do that now. So Tua's not almost, he's got to be progressing at this time of his career. You can't be staying the same. You can't be going down. You can't be getting in your head. So that's why they can't wait around, even though they're young. They got future. They got picks. They can't afford to do that because they're going to hurt their current guys like Tua. So they got to build this thing now. And again, they can win now. Another thing, Van Noy, hasn't been cut or traded yet, but it's going to be one or the other. So a guy they just signed last year, that's a big-time player. I don't care what anybody. Some people will probably try to justify it, but the only reason to do that, because you're cutting a good player, and it's a fit in Flores' defense. The only reason you do that is because you need that money. You want that money. They have projected $37 million in cap space, so they want more. Well, I kind of factored that into that because Van Noy will be cut or traded, but they can clear more money as well. They have a plan. Now, if a team is that confident, we're going to cut this guy because we're going to use this money. They're not cutting him to not use that money. So if they do that and then fail to land those guys because there's no guarantees, fail to go big, it's a big fail in my opinion. So there's several reasons why they are on this list there, as I explained. Number 5, the Baltimore Ravens, right around $25 million in cap space. This team's window is right now. They're going to be they feel like they could be a good team for a long time because they got really good players, good coaching staff, young players as well. But their window is right now. We actually saw it go down a little bit last year. They felt like a more dominant team the year before. Why was that? It was kind of a fresh system. Nobody knew what to expect. Offensive line was healthier. People kind of just played better. So multiple things factored into that. But over time, systems kind of slowly get figured out. It's one of those ones where you can kind of figure it out all you want. It's still very hard to stop, so it's always going to be pretty good for the Ravens. But over time, your window starts to close just because defenses and, coaching staffs, watching film, they start to figure things out, and that applies to every team. So I think your window's right now, but it does feel like the Ravens took a step back where their roster currently sits right now. And I think it's a fact, where they sit right now. Offensive line should, at first glance could get better because, Ronnie Stanley's going to be back. That's probably the best left tackle in football. He's going to be back. But now Orlando Brown wants a trade. So you take a step back there. The interior offensive line was nowhere near as good as it was 2 years ago last year, including the mess that they had at the center position. So they got to go to work. They got some open holes in the offensive line. Receiver position is bad. They could actually use legit ones, not just one, but, maybe a couple or a 1 and a 2. And then you look at the defense, their whole edge rush unit is free agents. So they got to go to work either replacing those guys or getting some of those guys back. So they have, and you see some of those guys across the defense too, kind of aging, especially looking at the actual defensive line. So the window does feel like it's kind of closing, and they got to focus on, for a really good team. They actually got some more holes than you would think at first glance. So they got to go to work to make sure that window doesn't shut now, because this is if another team, if they do free agency right and they clean up those little bit, the holes they got, it could be the best team in football any given time. So when you have the opportunity to be the best team in football and you have some cap space, you have abilities to maybe create some more, you don't sit back and get worse. Staying the same is getting worse because other teams adapt, So they need to do something here. You don't want that window to close now. So they're number 5 on the list. Get Lamar some help, keep they're gonna have to retool the defense a little bit just because the guys are free agents mainly, but that defense will be good. Just gotta make sure you're a championship team, not just maybe a championship team. 4 is gonna be the Raiders. They've cleared some space, $12 million roughly right now. As we speak, they recently cut Richie Incognito, and it sounds like they may try to get him back, so we'll see what happens there. But the Raiders are cutting a bunch of guys, and again, keep in mind, Incognito could come back. I'd say it sounds like it's gonna happen. So, but either way, they're kind of cutting guys. They still kind of made the offensive line a little bit of a question because of the injuries in the past. They cut Gabe Jackson. Again, Incognito's a question mark. We'll just give him the benefit of it's not really doubt, but we'll just say he's back. Trent Brown on the trading block, but they could have him back. He has injury concerns as it is. Denzel Good has been a good kind of guy filling in, end up starting because injuries. He's actually a free agent. So they're kind of creating, a little bit of those holes. Nelson Aguilar is a free agent. They need receivers in general anyways. They need receivers. I look at the defense. Defense was pretty bad, coverage in the, from the cornerback position, the back end, the safety position, the pass rush from interior, from the edge. They could get better at nose tackle. This team, this John Gruden, Derek Carr team, this isn't really, that's where it starts. And that's not a team that's like a potential team. Like, sure, they can be good like a few years from now, 5 years from now. Sure. But that's, it gives you vibes that's supposed to be winning right now team. And they were on a roll last year looking like a playoff team. They upset the Chiefs at one point, looked damn good while doing it. And they kind of went downhill. So I think now's the time it's supposed to be kind of a win now team. So now's the time to make it a win now team. On top of that, I mentioned they're cutting guys. They've already cut quite a few guys. Trent Brown on the trading block. We'll see what happens with him. It's no guarantee he's going to be off the team. I don't think they'll just cut him. Mariota's probably going to be gone. They might make some interesting decisions, Joyner, cutting guys like that. And again, they've kind of created holes. So if you cut all these guys to clear the space, you want to use that space. Okay? You're not clearing space just to look at it. So if they fail to do what they plan to do, which is possible, we see it happen you can't predict free agency, you can't predict bidding wars, but if they fail to do what they plan to do, it's a fail, especially for a team that's supposed to be a win-now team. So this is an ultimate team that you have to go big in free agency. Your plan has to work. Now we're on to the big top three. Number 3, same division here, the Los Angeles Chargers, $30 million projected cap. Another team that's they're kind of young you think that at first because they got a guy like Justin Herbert, and that's fantastic. He's got a bright future ahead of him. The rest of the team, though, you look at the rest of the team, it's not really the youngest team. You look at the defense, on paper, they weren't there last year. I think injuries definitely played a part. But Brandon Staley there now, very good defensive mind. But that on top of them on paper, elite defense. I'm not saying they will be, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen for sure. On paper, what my expectations are, elite defense, the best in football. It really should be. No excuses unless, they're really injured. That just sucks. But so that defense can win right now. Justin Herbert last year with his receiver unit, now we're going to have Eckler healthy. They can play. They can contribute to winning right now. So you go out, and while your defense has that window, look at those corners. They're aging. Derwin James hopefully is healthy. It sucks to say, but maybe he doesn't have the biggest window of staying healthy just by what happens in the past. Bosa's had injuries, but right now they're looking healthy. They're looking elite, in my opinion. Maybe add another pass rusher off the edge for that 3-4 defense. That defense is ready to win now, so the offense has to put themselves in that position to win right now. So that's big, So they need to go to work. Look again on defense. They can use another edge rusher. They can use some other pieces, but mainly that. On offense, they may need an entire offensive line. That's a lot of work. That means you got to dominate this free agency. Brian Balaga's fine at right tackle, but he doesn't have long, and he has injury concerns. So it almost feels like they need 4 starters this year because they're probably going to move on from Trey Turner. And all the other guys were mediocre at best last year, and they're free agents. It feels like they need 4 starters and a guy right tackle for the future, perhaps. That's what it feels like they need. A lot of work needs to be done. On top of that, Justin Herbert looked way better than expected. He looked pretty damn good last year, let's be honest. With the coaching staff that got fired, they definitely deserve They deserve to be fired from decisions that they made, but they deserve some credit for Justin Herbert. Now, taking a coach away from that's why they didn't fire him during season. Taking away that staff from a guy like Justin Herbert, I'm not saying it will, but it kind of could stunt his growth. You can see that's kind of why sophomore slumps happen in a way. And again, I'm not predicting that to happen, but it's possible for that to happen. So in order for that not to happen, you need to make sure this offense is in the right spot with that offensive line. A bad offensive line could contribute into that. So this team, again, needs to go big because they need something very important, offensive line. But that's number one. Number two, their defense is ready to win right now. They're not going to be ready to win. I mean, they could be, but as of right now, it looks like they're not going to be a team ready to win in 3-4 years from now. Great defenses don't last long, So that's number two. Win while you can, while this is your window. And number three, you don't want to mess with Justin Herbert. You don't want to set him back at all. That could do some damage. So they need to go big. Chargers definitely need to go big, especially on the offensive line. Number two, the Houston Texans, projected $25 million in cap, which is pretty good because they were far in the negative. They cleared some space. They can actually do some more work. They might get into the restructures right now. So they cleared some space. And before we even talk about the Deshaun Watson part, you look at this team, there's a lot of holes on this team. A lot of holes across the board. Big free agent Will Fuller. They're going to need to get Tyrell Adams back as well. And that kind of factors into another part of this. Lovie Smith is taking over. It's a totally different scheme. Totally different scheme. The defense was terrible last year, the worst in football at stopping a run. But now it's a totally different scheme on top of that. On top of you needing new players for the old scheme, now you got a new scheme where a lot of these players don't even fit. So you need pass rushers that fit. You need interior guys that can stop the run. You need to get Adams back just because you need 3 off-the-ball linebackers now. And there's your 3, McKinney, Adams, and Cunningham, who had a standout season last year. The secondary is pretty much a mess. I think they can make Reed and Lonnie Johnson work. Those guys are okay. We could see hopefully see some improvement there. But they got a lot of work to do across the board, and they're not another team. You didn't just clear the space for nothing. Go to work. Put your money where your mouth is, where your actions are here. Go to work. Don't just sit around. Don't just look at the cap space you cleared. You did it for a reason. When you have a guy like Deshaun Watson, you can win right now, and there's a lot of adjustments, like I mentioned, with Lovie Smith, new coaching staff, that need to be made here, and you got to get Will Fuller back as well. I mentioned that. Offensive line needs adjusting everywhere. Now we go into more of the Deshaun Watson factor, though. He doesn't want to play there. They're insisting that he's going to play there, and recent reports are, they're still not taking calls. We know that. Recent reports are they're willing to let him sit out. They're not going to. They don't want to take no what. So, and I might be in the same boat there with them. So I know people complain about that, but just because he's not trading, they're not trading him to your favorite team or where you're predicting him. They let them do their business. So, in my eyes, they want Deshaun Watson to be their quarterback, and they won't give him up. That's what it is right now. Whether you like it or not, it could change. But so they need to build the team around him. They need to make it appealing. And it's not like you go out and people may say, well, what if they do all that and he still doesn't want to play? That sucks, but you still built the team. You still built the team around a quarterback at least. So they absolutely, for all those reasons I explained, they have to go to work. I kind of had categories, how do you make this ranking system here? And they kind of fit every single one. You cleared the space, you got to go spend it. You have holes across the board. You got to appeal it to your quarterback somehow. You just got to get better, plain and simple, because you had a window and it felt like it went backwards, it closed, and you definitely can step back in there if you go big. So the Texans are number 2. Number 1, we got some teams I just missed and why after. Number 1 is the Indianapolis Colts. They're projected a lot of cap space, $45.5 million in that range, even after that's factoring in Carson Wentz. Now, again, just because you have a lot of cap space doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend it, but the Colts, they got to spend it. They got to go out. They've had this cap space for some time, and people kind of complained the first year where they held on to all of it, and I was fine with it. Play for the future. That team wasn't ready to win right at that moment anyways. The right fits weren't there. It made sense. They were a little quiet last year besides trading for DeForest Buckner, but it kind of worked out. They were a pretty good team last year. Now's the time. I see a lot of fits across the board, and I think they were saving it for this time anyways because they saw the free agents ahead. A lot of good players in this free agency class, a lot of fits. They have a good amount of free agents on their own, and they went out and got a quarterback that has a big question mark on him, let's be honest, whether you like him or not. So this is the time. They were a pretty good team last year. I think mainly because of coaching, and I think their defense has a lot of guys that there's just football players. That's what I loved about that defense. Just a bunch of guys playing as a team, flying to the ball. They don't really miss tackles. They're a sound defense, but does that type of defense keep up? That's kind of one question, but I like that defense, and they did run. There's so many factors on why Colts are number 1 here. At this moment, are they better or worse than that playoff team we just saw? They're worse. They're definitely worse right at this moment because they have free agents. Carson Wentz, at this moment, given how he just played, that's kind of a step down. He, even from Rivers, but the talent that he has inside him is above Rivers for sure. How do you get the talent out of him? The team's got to be pretty damn good. They already needed receivers as it was. Michael Pittman's going to be a stud, but they need receiver 1. They need more than that as well. They need that legit guy. They need a left tackle. When still a good offensive line when Costanzo was out. It was much different, though. Still solid, but it was much different. So they definitely need that, and that's one of those things that's easier said than done. Again, when they need the receivers, look at the defense. They kind of needed edge rush as it was. Justin Houston's a free agent. If they get him back, they still need more guys. DeForest Buckner kind of carried, I thought, that pass rush, getting pressure. I thought Houston was solid. I thought Buckner kind of created for the rest. And then they could get better at cornerback. They could get better in multiple spots there that cost a lot of money. And yeah, that's going to be a good question if they kind of run that same cover 2 scheme, because usually that doesn't work. And you saw them, they started to give up more yards through the air as the year went on. And that's kind of why, that cover 2, you start to watch it on tape, like, okay, the good quarterbacks are going to take the whole shot. They're going to get it every time. So they may have to switch up the scheme a little bit, because if you keep it the same, it's going to go in that direction that we saw as the year went on, kind of going into the playoffs. And a big thing in the playoffs, I thought the coaching staff did, put their team in a position to win. They just couldn't execute in those big moments. They get in the red zone, receiver running a wrong route, bad route, Rivers barely missing a throw. Running backs not hitting the hole straight. They're trying to get too creative. There just wasn't execution. It's because they didn't have those top-end players on the offense. You need to add the top-end players. If you had some of those playmakers, they beat the Bills, and who knows where they would have went. And again, we got to retool the defense. Now is the time to spend this money and make this championship team. And another part of this is Carson Wentz, because he played as bad as any quarterback last year. But we know that talent, it's got to be in there somewhere. It could have disappeared because of injuries, but usually that just doesn't go away. So that's what they're banking on. But you got to get them the weapons. You got to complete the offense line. You got to get them the weapons. And if they don't do that and Carson Wentz has another rocky year like that, then we're talking about Colts are questioning themselves next offseason. Do we need to get a quarterback? What's the situation here? Is Carson Wentz going to be in his own head? So now is the time. This isn't a project. This isn't a Carson Wentz long-term project. This isn't, you got to go out and get this team where it could be, because they were going like this heading into the playoffs and what that team was looking like. It's, when they lost to the Bills, it was like, man, if this team just gets some more playmakers, oh, that's a Super Bowl team here. And then now you look at, the free agents they have, change at quarterback, so it dropped down a little bit, but now here's your time with free agency in the NFL draft to hop over where you were. You got to do it, though. You got to go out and do it. So the Colts, now's the time. I was kind of okay with them. While people were kind of complaining, I was kind of okay with them, kind of taking it easy, not spending all their money. Now is the time. Let's see if they do it. Talk about some other teams, why they just missed the cut. You see these first two teams don't need necessarily dominate, maybe a few pieces. They're not a few pieces away from a complete team, so don't take that away from this. A few pieces may do it. The Cowboys, his offense is loaded. If they stay healthy, it's one of the best offenses in football. Plain and simple. I know people don't like to think that about the Cowboys, but they would have been last year if they were healthy. Plain and simple. It's just about staying healthy. Look at the defense. They need almost a whole defense, but that offense is so damn good if healthy that if you just grab, another pass rusher, a corner, a safety, it's going to be a dangerous team. They kind of ride on their offense a bit. If they're going to be good, it's going to be because of their offense either way. The offense is going to make or break them. So they need to have a good offseason. I don't know if they need to dominate, go out there and get across the board re-signings, and they're going to re-sign Dak, so I kind of factored that in. And then Washington as well. If Washington goes, they need a quarterback, they need receivers, maybe another offensive lineman. That defense is ready to win right now, but this is a team that they need more than a quarterback, of course. But if they went out and got a quarterback, they're going to be pretty damn good. So they got a lot of cap space. They don't need to spend all of it. And then you go in on a quarterback, a receiver, and they can even fill that in the draft. So this is a team. Basically, it's a team that could take that step by finding one position. That doesn't mean they're a complete team by then. So they don't really have to dominate. Some young teams, the Jaguars have the most cap space in football. It doesn't mean they have to go waste all their money, spend it. They have a ton of draft picks. They have a ton of time. Sure, it's a team that can make that jump. It's not a long process rebuild. They can make that jump almost right away. It's a tough division, in my opinion. But they can make that jump. But I think it's a kind of trust the process. It doesn't have to be a lengthy process. Just don't go drain all your money. Trust the process. And the Jets, the same thing. Jets are a more interesting one because they actually can create an elite defense here because they have some good players in right positions. They do need a lot more, but it could be a damn good defense, especially under Salah. But all the picks they have, all the time, they don't need to rush it. Let it come to them. Jags and Jets. It's not like it used to be. It's not like they're in stage one of rebuild. It kind of feels like they are. But the process goes so much faster if you just trust yourself and draft well and get the right, free agent pieces. So they don't need to go crazy. And kind of a category you don't really want to be under. They need to dominate. So they kind of fall under this list. But I couldn't really put them on there because it's not a team I can get. The teams that made the top 10, I'm going to get mad at them if they, I'm going to rip them if they don't go in. These teams, I can't really rip them this offseason. I can rip them based on their past by not being able to go in. Seahawks have positive cap space, not that much. They're going to have to they can restructure Russell Wilson. It's not a pay cut. They can do it Bobby Wagner. They can clear some space, and then they can go in. It's mainly focused on the offensive line and maybe get a pass rusher. They got a lot of work to do. That's a lot of work, but can they do all that? The Bills, barely positive. A team that's going to be good either way, but they have that window where they are right there. This team can win a Super Bowl now, but not by staying the same. Not by staying the same. So They kind of need to put the finishing touches on it, but can they do it? I think contracts, like I didn't like the Mario Addison contract. That's kind of hurting them now. Even if they cut him and save some money, they're missing out on saving a lot. That's just one example. So they would have had the opportunity to make the Super Bowl, like to be the team, be the contender, and they can't do that, really because their space. We'll see if they can clear some. So we're not saying they for sure can't do it. And the Steelers put themselves in an interesting situation. Keeping Big Ben around could be debatable as well, but they're going to lose some big-time players. They may bring one of them back, and they have some holes to fill as well. I think across the offensive line, running back, again, they could lose Juju, Bud Dupree. See, the defense took a step down when Bud Dupree got hurt. Their corners didn't play all that well last year. They're aging. They can clear some more space. So these teams might be there's a question mark. They might be able to, which is not looking good. So it's kind of unfortunate. But these teams, you might have wondered why they weren't on the top 10. This is why. But yeah, the teams in the top 10, they got to go to work. There isn't enough additions to go around for everyone. So there's going to be some really good free agencies. There's going to be some really bad ones from teams. So we'll see what happens here. Definitely thought this was an interesting video, something a little different. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe to us, full NFL coverage. We'll have you covered for the entire free agency and NFL draft. Of course, on our Twitter as well. It's a must follow. Breaking news, talking about that news instantly, keeping you guys involved in everything. So check it out at GoDows NFL. Link in the comments for anything you need. Thank you for watching this video. That's going to do it. Goodbye.